Meeting to order. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Lunder.
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Bittner,
Here.
Mr. Wolf, Mr. Shaboo,
Here.
Mr. Morris,
Here.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here. Approval of minutes from November 9th.
So made. Seconded.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye. Clerk, do we have any correspondence this evening?
I have no correspondence tonight, Madam President.
Anyone on council have any correspondence this evening? Administrative and department head reports. Mayor and Safety Director, Mayor Eva, good evening.
Good evening, Mrs. Bowers, members of council, the public here this evening. I have no report.
Thank you. Administrative Director, Ms. Bartone, good evening.
Good evening. Let's see, for tonight on the agenda are contracts as usual, no major changes, a couple of increases, so we stay the same, just change the dates. The next thing I need to bring up is I had a request from a resident to purchase a house in 2019 under the assumption, because he was told there was a tax abatement on it. So I'm guessing we should probably council for a meeting. But we can discuss this. I can forward all this information. I just wanted to talk about it during the meeting first, to give you a heads up. So one of those things that I brought up a couple of years ago with the developer who built the house, sold it with his realtor under the guise of it having a 10-year abatement, which was never applied for, which was never done. Purchaser didn't know that it was never done. So for the last 2 years, the bank's been collecting on a lot, and now it's $4,000 a year for property. So we'll talk about that in the upcoming meeting. I just want to do it the next meeting. It doesn't matter. I'll send all of this out, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The last thing I have on the list is we had a concerned resident come into City Hall this week. They had someone unknown to them stop in front of their house and start to take pictures of their front area. And when the homeowner asked them what they wanted, the individual informed her that what she had in the front yard was not compliant and she was going to be taken to court by city council, and encouraged her to come to the council meetings and fight city council. Now, she doesn't know who this person was, but put it out there so that you guys are aware. Someone is going around to at least a resident that we are aware of that came in very concerned that they had an unknown person to them taking pictures in front of their house. Report.
Thank you. Law Director, Mr. Lyons, good evening.
Good evening. I have no happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you. Police Chief, Chief Keeling, good evening.
Good evening, Madam President, members of council. I have a brief report today, which I've also sent you an email of. On Sunday, November 21st, under the direction of Patrolman Tina Messenger, the Metro Valley Police Department conducted its annual Village Cruiser event at Marks. Patrolman Messenger, Mayor Dave Hood, and myself collected non-perishable food items for cash donations from noon until 3 in front of Marks on Andrews Road. Food items were donated to the Menor Plains United Methodist Church's food pantry. The cash donations will be used for our Santa's Blue Helper Shop at Top program. We don't have any more since St. Andrews left. We don't have a food pantry. He was able to reach out and find United Methodist. We were also going to go to St. Bede's. However, with Menor's Drive, they were very successful there. So they were pretty good. So. Our two newest hires, Patrolman Mastercola and Patrolman Wright, are progressing through their FTO program. Patrolman Mastercola is almost in shadow phase, and Patrolman Wright is about to enter phase 3. Currently, the Menor Valley Police Department is having difficulty recruiting and retaining part-time police officers. There are a myriad of reasons for this, but the fact is fewer individuals are seeking careers in public safety. Menor on the Lake has always operated with a core group of full-time officers supplemented by part-time officers. Typical part-time employee would be fresh out of the academy, would begin a career here before going full-time with another agency. Few individuals are going to the police academy as open enrollment students. Many are now hired and sent to the academy by a sponsoring agency. Lieutenant Forsyth asked City Hall to look at the amount that the city has been paying to individuals who have started here part-time and who have left for various reasons. Note that some of the people did not complete training and some left for full-time positions before completing training. And I included a chart for members of council in their email. On average, pre-employment costs for each part-time employee plus training and uniform costs the city just over $3,500. So it's $3,500 just to get them walking the door. That's before we actually put any money into it for training. Since 2018, we've hired and lost 11 employees who no longer work for the city. 4 of those employees left before ever working a shift on their own. 9 out of the 11 are currently working full-time at other police agencies. In addition to the monetary cost of hiring, we also have to look at the time that it's taking to conduct background investigations on so many employees. Backgrounds require specialized training and are time-consuming and tedious. Clerical and IT staff also have to get involved every time someone is added or removed from the system. Our longest-serving part-time employees being forced out due to changes in pension healthcare system, and we're going to lose another long time serving part-time officer in April of 2022. One of our current part-time employees, who has been consistently working over 40 hours a week, is a phone call away from accepting a full-time position with an area department. Although he would like to stay with our department, he and his wife are expecting a child, and it's difficult to support his family on part-time wages with no benefits. My concern is not having the manpower on hand to cover our shifts. Without staff to cover for days off, holidays, vacations, morale goes down. Overtime is forced and days off are denied. I'm requesting 2 additional full-time police officers. We need the additional officers to cover the shifts that have traditionally been filled in the past by part-time personnel. The increase in full-time staff will allow our department to have more flexibility in covering open shifts with less reliance on part-time personnel. Every department in Lake County is experiencing this problem with staffing. Additionally, many are looking currently to hire full-time employees. Our current model is no longer working for our city. I know that will involve some additional expense, and you may ask, how can we afford this? If we do not do something, the question will be, how can we afford not to do this? Yeah, that concludes my report. Any questions?
Any questions to administration and department heads at this time?
Any update on that audit?
No, they did their second round of information requests this week.
Anybody else? Board and committee commission reports. Ordinance committee met on November 15th.
Yeah, we started at 6 o'clock. In attendance was Robert Johnson, Preston Law, Jim Lunder, Paul Moore, Dave Viva, Jim Lyons, Michelle Moore, Ron and Kathy Donnell, Skip Gray. First item, parking penalty. The committee agreed to postpone any further discussion on the ordinance so that the police chief, John Geilich, will be available to add his input. Right-of-way tree lawn, we covered the final version of this ordinance thoroughly. We received many good suggestions and positive input. Ordinance 1036 trees, after a brief discussion, the committee agreed to continue discussing improving the clarity of the ordinance. Ordinance 618.19, the committee agreed not to include squirrels on the nuisance list. And lastly, the committee agreed that we would not meet in December. Personally, I want to thank Mr. Lyons for showing great help there. Our next meeting will be January 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m.
Any other meetings? At this time, we will open this portion to the public. If you please step to the lectern and state your name and address for the record. Hearing none, we will close this portion. Legislation before council. We have resolution number 2021-R-29. Will you read it by its title, please?
Resolution number 2021-R-29. A resolution confirming the appointment of CT Consultants, Inc. as city engineer, affirming their contract, establishing their compensation, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend? Hearing none, this will go on second reading. Resolution number 2021-R-30, will you read it by its title, please?
Resolution number 2021-R-30, a resolution confirming the appointment of Joseph M. Burley as city prosecutor and assistant law director, affirming his contract, determining compensation, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend? Hearing none, that will go on second reading. Resolution number 2021-R-31, will you read it by its title, please?
Resolution number 2021-R-31, a resolution confirming the appointment of James M. Lyons as law director and assistant city prosecutor, affirming his contract, determining compensation, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend?
So made before he changes his mind.
Second it.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye. Motion for passage?
So made.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Lunder. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you. I was about to change my mind.
Resolution number 2021-R-32, will you read by its title, please?
Resolution number 2021-R-32, a resolution confirming the appointment of Mike Sweeney to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Motion to suspend?
So made.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Lunder. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Motion for passage?
So made.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Lunder. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Resolution number 2021-R-33, will you read it by its title, please?
Resolution number 2021-R-33, a resolution requesting the Lake County Auditor to make advance payments of taxes pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 321.34 and declaring an emergency.
Any time restrictions on this?
For budget, I mean, if we pass it next meeting.
Before then. Motion to suspend? Hearing none, this will go on second reading. Any old business? New business? Mr. Morris.
I'd like to make, I'd like to make a motion that the meeting scheduled for December 28th be canceled due to the holiday.
I'll second it.
Motion to suspend or cancel the last meeting of December 28th. Motion made by Mr. Morse, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye. Motion for passage.
So made.
Seconded.
Motion made by Mr. Lunder, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
As we're on this topic, we want to schedule the organizational meeting for January as well. Or do we want to wait until our next December meeting?
You can hold till the.
I'm fine with scheduling.
I
it.
see
I
what-
don't care.
Okay.
Let's go ahead, do it. I like
If
scheduling meetings.
everybody can.
Yeah.
Their schedules, because.
Because I know there's a conflict. yeah.
Correct, and we want to make sure that they have enough time to.
Right. So I was looking at the calendar, January 3rd. Does that work?
Planning and zoning, that night,
What time is that?
6,
We can have a,
if there is one.
but we can do it at 7, like a normal council hour meeting.
Well, the city hall's closed that day, so there will not be a planning. and zoning.
Okay, so no planning and zoning that day, okay. So January 3rd at 6 PM, since we will not have a planning and zoning meeting. So January 3rd at 6 PM. Any other new business? At this time, we will open this portion to the public. Will you please step to the lectern and state your name and address for the record? Hearing none, we will close. Announcements and settings of meetings. Board of Zoning Appeals will be on Monday, December 20th at 7 PM. Organizational meeting will be January 3rd at 6 PM. Next agenda meeting will be December 9th at 6 PM. The next regular meeting of council will be December 14th at 7 PM.
Planning and zoning, December 6th, tentative, 6 P.M. I've heard there's an agenda.
I'm sorry, what date?
December 6th.
6 PM. Thank you. Any other meetings? Motion to adjourn?
So made. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
We are adjourned.